Hi, so in this video I'm going to cover the process of swapping the 7th gen Toyota Celica GT front brakes for the ones that come from a Toyota Avensis T25, which are 40mm wider in diameter, but they still bolt on the front axle from the box. The front brakes on the GT model are just 255mm wide, which is kind of sad for such a car. Well, the rear is even worse, but that's for another video. So, what we are going to need for this project is... So, for this project we actually don't need anything special apart from the standard brake parts. So I've got Avensis caliper holders with new slider pins and brake bed plates, the Avensis calipers, dust shields, these beautiful 295mm Rotinger drilled and grooved discs, Rotinger brake pads, and some .4 brake fluid. I will put list of all part numbers in the description so you can find them easily. Well, the next step is of course to totally forget to loosen the lug nuts and start jacking up the car. At least think about safety and use jack stands. Then, of course, use the most redneck way to save time instead of using hydraulic car jack. It might work for like 10 seconds, but then I got my wrist twisted not so nicely, so I just gave up. Well, now is the proper time to remember to loosen the nuts, so just grab a breaker bar with your nut size and loosen all the nuts before raising the car. Also, I've got a lovely company. This thrush decided to have a snack and he crushed a whole snail on the pavement next to me, so that was nice to watch. And now you can finally proceed with jacking up the car. Also, don't forget to safely hold the car in place by the jack stands. Now, there is of course a time for another abomination, which will just cause more damage to yourself in the most stupid way you can imagine.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
And that's it. We've got access to the front brake. Now it is time to remove the old caliper, which is being held on by two 14mm screws. So I used a ratchet and a spanner to hold the slider pin, so that I can remove the screws. Also, for some reason I've got this awesome habit of just removing the bolts by hand, whilst having a proper tool in the other hand and completely ignoring it. And of course it takes ages to do it this way. Now hold on, because the most unexpected thing will happen. Who could have thought that? Well, of course I'm going to do it by hand again. And the bolts are out, so we can remove the brake caliper and properly store it. I don't recommend to remove the brake line just yet, because it would just leak all over the place. It is not good to leave the caliper to hang by the brake line, as it could get damaged. So a good place to hang it is just to put it on a suspension spring. Also, we can remove the brake pads. These do have plenty of meat on them, so I'll just keep them if anyone will ever need the OEM front brake set. Now it is finally time to remove the old caliper bracket, which will hopefully go as smooth as everything to this point. Unfortunately, the first few attempts pointed to the exact opposite, as no earthly amount of force was able to loosen the bolt. And after some attempts later, I just gave up. Well, sort of. There is always a reliable way of just beating the shit out of everything that won't comply, so that's what I went with. After my attempt on violence surprisingly failed, I just sprayed the bolts with some rust penetrant and they finally let loose. This is an act which will turn out to be a really bad idea later, you will see why. And with the old bracket finally removed, we can move to replacing the brake rotor. I'd usually expect that the rotor will come off with just a slight pull, but as it seems, this one is frosted spot on. And to stupid issues, there are always some stupid solutions. Well, at least I used softwood, which should not bend the disc in any way. But as you see, this method is highly effective. Anyways, I think there is always a better way to solve stuff than just smash the heck out of it with a plank. Now the dust shield has to come off, which might be an issue as most of the bolts holding it in place will probably be rusted in and will snap or tear. The shield is being held in place by 3 T30 Torx screws, which are supposed to be removed when the wheel hub is not in place, so getting them out might be really tricky. As the angle grinder might suggest, extracting the bolts wasn't an option. I've actually managed to extract one bolt on each side, and the rest was just removed using the grinder. I've actually made an attempt to get the snap bolts out by welding a nut on them, but every time the nut snapped and I just gave up. In the end, I just decided to weld a new dust shield by the old bolt spots and it held up pretty tight, so I just moved on. Also, remember when I told that spraying the bolts with oil on the cloth was a bad idea? Well, here's why. Realizing mid-welding that the cloth and a piece of your pants are on fire was really an unpleasant surprise. But finally, I can put the new brake disc on. Also, don't forget to sample your brake cleaner before use. Inhaling few sprays will do just fine and will ensure the proper quality of the product. I did sample at least half of the bottle before use myself. Here we can see a substantial difference between the two discs. Now to install the new caliper bracket, I've tightened the new discs to the wheel hub to secure it in place. And as the disc is firmly in place, we can install the new caliper bracket. The bolts holding the new bracket in place are identical ones that were used on the old ones, so you don't need anything that you don't already have. And that's the new caliper bracket in place. Now it is turn for the brake pads, which need to slide into the little plates on the brackets, which will hold the pads by spring force. And now, if you can see through all the sunshine, we can put the caliper itself into place. The Avensis caliper screws into the slider pins with two 12mm bolts in my case. After securing the caliper in place, we can transfer the brake line into the new caliper. Of course I forgot to loosen the brake line when the old caliper was still bolted on, but by hammering the brake line bolt with a hammer it can be done now too. Next we prepare our kit for 1-person brake bleeding, which consists of basically just a bottle with soft tubing that will fit onto the caliper bleed bolt and wire that will attach the bottle where we want it to. The bottle has to be filled above the tubing and with brake fluid, so while bleeding the brakes we don't suck any air in. Then attach the tubing to the bleed bolt, position the bottle somewhere above the caliper and turn the bleed bolt counterclockwise a half a turn to let the brake fluid flow. Also top up your brake fluid reservoir before bleeding the brakes, so you don't run out dry and suck the air in. Next, get into the car and pump your brake pedal a few times. This forces the fluid into the calipers and pushes air out. Repeat this process until no more bubbles keep showing up. After bleeding the brakes, just tighten the bleeding bolt, remove the DIY tool and put the rubber cap back on. I also cleaned the area with more brake cleaner to prevent the paint on the calipers from being degraded by the corrosive brake fluid, just in case. And now, when the brakes are done, we can just put the wheel back on. Then it is just the standard process of tightening the lug nuts in a star pattern and you are off to go. Well, and the project is done. I think it turned out really well, and the difference in braking should be really noticeable. Here is a before and after comparison. And now, just by the magic of snapping my finger, the other side is of course finished too. So, that's all with the budget-friendly big brake kit on the 7th generation Toyota Celica. For me, it was a one-day project that cost me around €400, depending on the state of the parts. In my case, all but the caliper brackets was brand new, so that added a bit to the cost. I hope that this video was helpful to you and you can now start your own brake swap project. Thanks for watching!